Hey guys. All right, so the topic for today's video is secession in the United States of America. Do we need to break up? So this is something I've been talking about for a long time, and I'm under the belief that it would be a good idea for the United States of America to break up, not be one union anymore, and dissolve into maybe 50 different states or even possibly a few different nations. You could see the middle of the country in the South becoming one country, the Southwest becoming another country, Texas could be its own country, the Northeast breaking off. And I've been talking about this for a long time, for at least close to 8 to 10 years at this point. And I do a lot of shows. I used to do a lot of shows over at Fox News. Nowadays, I'm exclusive with Headline News. And when I talk to people in the mainstream media about this, it used to just be kind of a ridiculous idea that people would dismiss, like, that's crazy. The United States of America couldn't possibly break up. Over the last couple of years, when I talk about it, people more and more seem to think it's a realistic possibility and maybe even a good idea. So I would say this. The idea of a nation is kind of a social construct. It's not something that actually exists. The lines between the USA and Canada, or the lines between the USA and Mexico, aren't actual lines. They're written up on a map by some rich people, and what ends up forming are nationalities. And nationalities are it's different from the state. It's the idea that people have kind of a common belief system, a common identity, cultural ties, a common language, whatever, a shared set of beliefs. And it seems to me more and more it's become obvious that there's nothing really holding America together anymore. And I don't think us being artificially held together serves really any positive outcomes at this point. So if you think about it this way, everybody's talking about the polarization of the country, the fact that the left is going more far left and the right is going more far right, and the fact that people don't, there seems to be almost nothing that people have in common anymore. We seem to be at each other's throats. I'm not saying it's the worst it's ever been. I mean, we did fight a civil war at one point in this country, but that's a pretty long time ago. And at least in my lifetime, I don't think the country's ever been more divided. And it seems like they're divided on issues that are irreconcilable. So if you look at the let's say the most passionate Trump haters in the country, I don't know what percentage this is. It's a little bit over 50% of the voting population that even votes. But let's say the most passionate 20% of people who hate Donald Trump, and then the most passionate 20% of people who support Donald Trump. Well, the ones who support Donald Trump supported him almost solely for one central issue, which was about immigration. They want to build a wall, they want to deport all the people here illegally, and they want to stop letting in illegal immigrants. And some of them go even further and want to actually crack down on legal immigration as well. I think in general, it's a rejection of the demographic changes in America and the fact that, we're going to be, a majority minority nation and then ultimately a majority Hispanic nation, and people are upset about that. They don't like that for a myriad of different reasons, and that's their central issue. Over on the 20% who hate Donald Trump, they see basically enforcing Obama's immigration policy, or what was Bill Clinton's immigration policy, or at least maybe not their policy, but at least what they said their policy was. Like Bill Clinton talked about cutting down on illegal immigration and deporting people and all that stuff. They see that as making you a Nazi. You're the most evil person in the world if you want to do that. The other people will not compromise on allowing illegal immigrants into the country. How do you reconcile that? How do you put that back together? You have one group of people in the country who see abortion as murder, and another group of people in the country who see any attempt to regulate abortion as a fundamental violation of women's rights. How does that come together? How is it possible, if your worldviews are this diametrically opposed, how is it possible that going forward you can ever work together? I mean, just take your average Trump supporter and then the average social justice warrior and tell me, maybe I'm wrong, but please explain it to me. how could this ever go to a place where we can identify as one nation going forward, where there's any way to resolve this conflict? I don't see it. I think we're getting driven more and more apart, and honestly, I don't think it would be such a bad thing if the country were to break up. And in fact, I think it would be a positive thing, far more positive than negative. And if you look at, the real problem is that even if we were able to kind of put these things together, I mean, we'd need to. We'd need to actually get people together because we have these major problems coming up in the next 10, 20 years that we're going to face. And if we're completely divided like this, there's really no chance that we're going to come together and solve these issues. And the main issues to me seems to be the overwhelming debt. We're now $20 trillion in debt, and that's nothing compared to the unfunded liabilities of public sector pensions, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. I mean, you're talking tens of trillions of dollars worth of unfunded liabilities. It's way bigger than the national debt. And we haven't really suffered through any of this because we're just at the beginning of the baby boomers retiring. And we've had interest rates artificially held low for the last decade. So we haven't really suffered the effects of this huge debt that we're carrying. But one way or another, that's going to have to go away. Interest rates are going to have to tick back up to somewhat historic reasonable levels within, say, the next decade, 20 years at absolute most. And then we're going to really be hit with some problems. We're expanded way too far around the world militarily, and there's such a vested interest in the military-industrial complex that no one seems, in any political way, anything short of a collapse. There doesn't seem to be any pullback there. So it seems like the only logical conclusion is we break up. And the truth is, America is already over. The idea of America has been over for a long time. America started as a republic and turned into an empire, the greatest empire the world's ever seen. America started as an experiment in restrained government. Everything about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights was restraining the government. It was basically taking the powers of a monarch and then splitting them up into all these different groups that would be checks and balances that were pitted against each other, so no one could do too much. The government couldn't grow too big. And then the Bill of Rights is just straight up lists of what the government can't do. Congress shall write no law. Congress shall write no law. Congress won't infringe on this. It's just what the government can't do. And that's all gone. I mean, it's been gone for a long time. America has started as an experiment in restrained government. It's become the biggest, most powerful government in the history of humanity. We can bomb any country we want. We can, collect metadata on all our citizens. We throw more of our own people in cages than any other country. It's the whole idea has been over for a long time anyway, and it doesn't really seem like it does too much good for us to stick together. I mean, it just seems like what the federal government does is 90% evil. I don't know. I can't really think of anything that they do that's a positive. And so all that would happen is we could split up and go into smaller countries and go our own ways. Now, I mean, look, just think of it in terms of a relationship. Everybody has seen or been in a relationship that's soured, where the people just hate each other and they're not getting along anymore, and being in a relationship isn't doing anything positive. And what's the answer in that situation? Well, it's unfortunate, it's not pleasant, but usually the answer is to go your separate ways. And I think as a nation, we've hit that point. And the idea, it doesn't have to be a disaster. I mean, it doesn't have to be bad for people. It could be a peaceful, orderly dissolution of the government. I mean, look, the Soviet Union broke up, and that was the best thing that ever happened to those people. I'm not saying it was a completely easy transition. It has its challenges, but overall, it seemed like a pretty good thing. The fact that you're a smaller country doesn't mean you're not going to live as well, doesn't mean you won't be rich, doesn't mean you won't be as happy. Some of the richest, happiest countries are pretty small nations. I don't really see any reason why that couldn't be the case for us too. So anyway, let me know what your thoughts on that are. I'd be curious to get your feedback. If you want to hear more about this topic, listen to my podcast, Part of the Problem. Oh, there we got a nice little beep. No, seeing how the sausage is made. All right, guys, I'll be back on Monday with a brand new video. Got Michael Malice on the podcast today. Go check it out over at gasdigitalnetwork.com.